So yes, thanks everybody for joining the second session in our Agile UX Masterclass for May, for March. We are here with Laura Klein, who's going to be talking about how to use data to better inform your product development, product design. And I'll hand it over to her for a quick intro, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Thanks so much. So do you want me to I can just jump into the presentation?
If you want to give people just a quick introduction of your work and your background, and then we can go ahead and jump right into it.
Sure thing. So I am Laura. I have written a couple of books. One is called UX for Lean Startups, and one is called Build Better Products. Build Better Products just came out in November. And I'm a ex-engineer, UX designer, product manager, kind of all of those things. And so I have spent a lot of my career figuring out ways to combine qualitative and quantitative data in order to make better products for everybody. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today.
Cool. Yep. I think we can just dive right into it.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. Like I said, today I'm going to talk about data. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about how to use both qualitative and quantitative data to build better products. If my slides will move. There we go. Okay, so I want you to be honest, and I can't see you, so this is going to be entirely, on the honor system. Who is just the tiniest bit tired of hearing about data? I mean, like, you can't leave the house without running into a data scientist, or you can't get coffee without hearing somebody talk about, all the amazing things that they're doing with metrics or analytics or whatever. Every conversation at Phil's sounds like, we're A/B testing, we're doing funnel analysis. Hey, what about cohort analysis? Blah, blah, blah. And it's almost enough to make me want to make my own coffee. It's not quite there, but very close. But sorry, I need to talk about data a little bit more, and I need to talk about it for a really important reason, which is that using data well actually helps us make better products, but not all the time. See, badly collected and used quantitative data can honestly be worse than no data at all. And believe me, there are some people out there who are just doing some really horrible things with numbers. Numbers, metrics, analytics, whatever you want to call this stuff. It is incredibly helpful in making good product decisions, but only when you're using the right stuff in the right way. And there are a lot of really important things that quantitative data doesn't do. And sadly, a lot of teams don't really seem to get this. Data doesn't replace design. The whole idea that we can just throw things out into the world and A/B test our way to a great product is just one of the worst aspects of the rise of this big data stuff. Metrics don't replace designers. They don't replace user researchers. Metrics enhance those things. They make them better. Quantitative data also they don't replace listening to users. I mean, sure, it gives us another channel for getting feedback from users, but the information that metrics and analytics give us isn't the same as what we get from connecting with real human beings really using our product. This stuff also can't tell us what we should be building. It only gives us information about what we have built. And yes, that is an incredibly useful tool in deciding what to try next, but it's not so good that we simply throw away all of our other tools now that we have, big data. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But first, I want to talk about what quantitative data can do. Data help inform our design decisions. As I said, metrics, analytics, numbers, they don't replace design or product decisions, but this gives us very important feedback on our product decisions. Metrics help us understand whether our decisions helped or hurt the desired user behavior. In other words, they sort of tell us whether we're going in the right direction. They can also help inform our research and tell us what we should be looking into. Again, I'm going to get into details in a minute, but you can see from this list that good quantitative data add to our qualitative research and the design work that we also need to do. That is, I think, enough high-level blather. So let's look at an actual example. I want you to imagine a funnel, not just any funnel, not the one you have in your kitchen, a checkout funnel. So imagine that this funnel is part of your product. Let's say that you have a software as a service business or an e-commerce site that allows people to sign up and pay you for something. does not matter what it is that they're paying you for. They're just giving you money, and that is a good thing, and let's not question it, okay? We're just going to look at the part of the product where you can actually, get money from people. They are deciding to give you money. So for this particular product, there are a few steps that people have to go through in order to give you money. Now, I am not saying that these are the right steps or that they're in the right order. You could absolutely argue that there are too many of them, or that you might want to move them around, or that some of them are worse than others, or that some of them don't apply to your particular product. I get that. That's cool. There's a different way to figure that out. It's in my book. So one of the reasons why I don't like to call these things funnels is, okay, the implication of a funnel is that everything that you pour into the top comes out the bottom. That's how funnels work. That's not how these sorts of funnels work. This is more like a sieve. You can see that each step of the funnel, we're losing a certain percentage of the people who started. So of all the people who come into the top of the funnel, 20% drop out just at the first step, and some more drop out at every subsequent step. See? Very sieve-like. Here it is translated into numbers, and I am begging you not to go back and check my math, but it's probably pretty close to right. What this is showing us is that for every 100 people that we dump into the top of the funnel, only 18 people are successfully getting to the bottom. In other words, you are acquiring 100 people through some means, probably buying them with Google Ads or getting customer referrals or any number of things that are not free, and you're only getting money from 18 of them. That is what is happening, and that is not good. So if we look at the funnel, we can see that some of the steps look less good than others. Specifically, that payment info screen looks pretty bad. Like, we're losing 36 out of every 100 people right there. That's what we call a friction point, or a oh shit point. Anybody have any guesses why? I mean, I'll bet just sitting there, you could come up with some ideas. Based just on this number, I will bet that a lot of you have big ideas about what's wrong with this payment screen and how to fix it. I know this because I've shown this graph to people in companies before, only using their actual metrics from their actual funnels. And they've immediately started to brainstorm ways to fix this. Maybe we need to add payment methods, or maybe it's confusing. Maybe users don't feel secure and we should put a lock on the page, or maybe we should try doing all of these things and then see if the problem just magically gets fixed. I want you to stop that. I want you to stop it right now. See, when you do that, you're effectively trying to use quantitative data for something that quant doesn't do. You're trying to use quant to explain rather than to describe. And if you really want to understand the friction point, you need to do two things. You need to find it, and that's what we did, right? That's where the metrics and analytics were super useful. It pointed out, hey, there's a problem here. And then you need to explain it. And that's where qualitative research comes in. Because, and you can say it with me, I've been saying the same thing for about 8 years now, quantitative data tell you what is happening. Qualitative data tell you why it is happening. So if quant tells you what, and qual tells you why, who cares? How does that work in the real world? I mean, how would you use those together in order to build a better product? So let's look at a way that that might work. For this example, we are going to assume that you already have some sort of product out in the world and that you have some users using it. In fact, you have enough users using it to get useful quantitative data, which is a different presentation, but actually quite important. But this makes it easier to collect data when you have people from whom to collect it. The first step in this process is to identify where your biggest problem is. I mean, there's no reason to spend a whole lot of time working on things that don't need a lot of improvement. You want to concentrate on the things that matter most. Now, as we saw earlier, one of the best ways to identify big problems is to use these funnel metrics. They are not the only kinds of metrics you can use. They are outstanding for understanding where people are falling out of your product. That's what they do. You might remember from our funnel before, it was only a few minutes ago, that the payment info step of the funnel was a particularly large problem. This, of course, is quantitative data. We are using quantitative data to help us identify our biggest problem, but we still don't know why it's a problem. That's step 2, understanding why. For this particular process, we could use a technique like, say, observational usability testing to understand why. So observational usability testing is one of many forms of qualitative research. It is a very useful methodology that I sometimes describe as watching people use your damn product in order to understand all the pain that you are inflicting on them. It involves watching people use your damn product in order to understand all the pain that you were inflicting on them. So in the case of our funnel flow, you'd want to get people, preferably people who are or might be actual users of your product. And I want you to have them go through the purchase flow in order to see where they get stuck. Just shh, quietly watch. Just watch them. Don't give them things to do. Just observe. You can ask questions later. You want to pay particular attention, of course, to that payment info step to see why people were getting stuck there. What's the problem there? Now, based on your observation of between 4 and 6 people, because that is the correct number of people for this sort of small qualitative study, by the way, and I'm not going to go into why, but that should be enough to start to develop ideas, you might come up with some observations, hopefully. You might see some patterns. Maybe some of the people didn't have the payment information handy. Others may have been confused by a particular question. Maybe all of them saw a box for a promo code and wandered off into the depths of the internet looking for a discount. So I like to show people the problems that I've observed on the funnel, sort of like I'm showing here, just so I can sort of visualize each person falling out of the funnel at that step, just jumping. Now, of course, now that you've observed some possible user problems, you need to figure out if fixing those problems for users will solve the business problem that you have, which is that you're losing a large percentage of people on this step of the funnel. It could be that each of these problems that we observed is negatively affecting your funnel equally. Or maybe there's just one of them that's causing that giant drop-off, or maybe it's something else that you didn't observe. That's always a possibility. Whichever it is, the way to figure this out is by coming up with some possible solutions for these problems and seeing if they improve your funnel. Now, my first step in making a product change is to create several solution hypotheses. And the reason I do this, if I'm going to test to see if the change was successful, is I have to know what success and failure both look like. If there's more than one way to solve a user problem, and to be clear, there generally is. We just identified problems. We didn't say, obviously, this is the solution for it. We thought, oh, here are a bunch of problems. Oh, I can think of like 5 or 6 different solutions for each of those problems, and we're probably not going to build all of those. So one of the things I like to do is I like to list the possible negative consequences of any change as well as the positive ones. Again, an example, one of the problems that we observed in our hypothetical research, people looked for a promo code and left the checkout funnel, right? Again, I'm not saying that this is without a doubt the most important problem we saw. It's one that we observed. It's one that I've observed many times in real life. And it's one for which we can pretty quickly come up with some possible solutions, right? The easiest solution is just get rid of the box. I mean, if people see the box and then flee in horror, maybe just get rid of it, right? Sounds reasonable. So our hypothesis is if we remove the promo code and from the checkout flow, we will see an increase in conversion. Now, what often happens here is that people say something like, oh, right, I read a blog post that this happened, so clearly this is the right answer. And then they change it and they ship it and they never look again. Problem solved. Everything. Now, of course, you are going to be millionaires. Except there was a reason that promo code was on there in the first place, right? We should also ask ourselves, what could possibly go wrong with this change? We owe it to ourselves and our users to understand the full impact of anything that we do. For example, it might be that offering promo codes to people actually increases our acquisition. Offering somebody a 20% coupon might incentivize them to come check out the product. Or offering the product for 20% less might just be what is needed to convert, extremely price-sensitive people for that first purchase. So if we're going to get rid of the promo code box, we need to keep an eye on the top of the funnel to make sure we're not hurting acquisition, and at the bottom to make sure we're not ruining conversion further down, right? Remember, nothing I'm predicting here is necessarily true. These are just assumptions that I'm making that we need to test, which is what brings us to step 4. This is the most important step. Without learning and iterating, we are just flinging products out into the void and then going on our merry way, assuming that we've made improvements, when really we could be spending a lot of time on things that don't improve our metrics or even make things worse, which is the real problem that I see all the time. For this step, we're going to use a combination of both quant and qual. In order to learn, we need to come up with a test for our solution hypothesis. How could we figure out if the thing that we're doing to solve the problem we observed is actually correct? Well, we need to do some sort of quantitative testing of the design without the promo code in order to see if conversion improves without sacrificing any other metric. Now, ideally, we would do this in an A/B test, since that's the best way to determine whether there's a difference between the new design and the control. See, an A/B test cancels out external noise. For example, if you suddenly got an influx of people from a different channel, it could affect your conversion rates. But if you're A/B testing, you don't need to worry about that because it's all the same people and you're just testing different versions. Again, this is a really quantitative way of finding out if user behavior was affected by the changes that we made. Let's say that our A/B test came out well and we saw an improvement in conversion, but not too much of a decrease in acquisition. Great! It means that our changes improved things overall. Yay, good for us, we win. But it's not enough just to know that we're right, sadly. We also need to learn why we were right, and conversely, why we were wrong when we were wrong, which does happen. We can do this again by performing some simple qualitative research. Just do more observational testing or use another research methodology and contact the folks who are still getting stuck at the payment step to see why they're getting stuck. That call people who fail is a fabulous qualitative research method that I think is not used nearly enough. Just make sure that the changes that you made, were improvements, but also make sure that they were improvements for the reasons that you predicted and not just some anomalous fluke. This happens sometimes, you make a change. Hey, look, everything's better. And then 3 weeks later, everything reverts to mean and you realize it wasn't you to begin with. And if we weren't right, like I said, or if we weren't right enough, if it improved things a little bit, but not enough, and we wanted to see if we could improve things more, we might go on to implement another solution to a problem that we saw in testing, or we might try addressing a different problem next time. Whichever it is, we just keep iterating until we are consistently happy with the numbers that we're seeing on that particular metric. And when we're done, and that problem isn't as big a problem any longer, we can go back through the steps and identify a whole new problem by looking at our quantitative data. So that's the only way to do design, right? That's what we're doing now, right? That's our process. No, God, no. There are lots of other ways to combine qualitative and quantitative data. Let's very quickly try a different combo of quant and qual, shall we? This time we're going to start a little differently, though. This time, instead of starting from quant, which is not a thing everyone can do, we are going to start from qualitative research. So again, you could start with a usability test. That's one option. Or alternatively, you could start with some other sort of qualitative research, maybe some customer interviews in order to understand what sorts of issues people are having when they're using the product. Another good one is to interview former users, like I talked about, to understand why they're former. Talk to your failures. Find out why people who left. Regardless of what questions you want answered, the idea is to start with this qualitative research to generate ideas, rather than using quant to generate ideas. Let's say that we interview some former users and we find out that they signed up for our software as a service product, but then they had problems because they couldn't use it for work because their companies didn't feel it was secure enough. It's happened. So, these people who were really excited about our product had to cancel, or they only got to use it for personal stuff, or, but they really wanted to be able to upgrade and use it for work. Again, we might learn all sorts of things. That's just one option, but this is totally the sort of thing that companies learn when they start talking to users. Since we've started with the why, now we need to figure out the what, and that is step 2. The idea is to take what we've learned and try to predict how changing it might affect our metrics. Remember how in our first walkthrough, we started from metrics, that's the what, and we moved to qualitative research, which is the why? We're doing the exact opposite here. So in this example, we decided that some folks we found, we didn't decide, we don't get to pick that, but we found that some of the folks who are using our product have a problem using it in their work environments. Let's imagine that we were going to fix that problem and make it so that, our product had the security necessary to be used in a corporate environment. What metric would that change? Think about it. In this case, the metrics we want to look at aren't necessarily the funnel metrics we've been, going through. Instead, we might want to look at something like the percentage of the users on the pro plan, if we have a free and a pro. Or possibly we might want to look at the, the length of the retention, or the actual usage, or the number of seat licenses, whatever it is that we use to measure success. See, for step 2, we need to identify the metric that we think will improve if we fix this problem that we identified in step 1. You may be wondering why we'd bother to do this. I wonder that all the time. After all, we identified a problem during our qualitative research, right? Obviously, fixing it will improve something. Let's just fix it. Fix all the things. Here's why we care. When you really start to do good user research, you will find that something remarkable happens. You will start to identify problems that your users are having. you will identify lots of problems. You almost never have a customer interview and uncover one perfect gem of a problem that is the only thing wrong. And if you could just fix that, then the product would become the platonic ideal. See, your product has flaws. My products have flaws. We all do. And when you find lots of problems, you need to find a way of predicting which of these problems it actually makes sense to fix first. One of the ways to do that is to map the user need back to a real business need. In other words, if I fix this specific problem, what's my predicted outcome? What is the best possible outcome? And what is the worst thing that could happen? Your goal is to find a user need that you can fix that will also improve a metric that you care about. For example, the problem that we identified might improve retention. Great. We probably want to improve retention, unless our retention numbers are really good and the real problem that we have is conversion. If you've only got 10 users, you might not want to spend any time improving retention. You don't want to have the best retained 10 users on earth. You probably want to be working on acquisition. So again, before you start solving problems, try to predict what metric will be affected if you successfully solve that problem and figure out how you'll know you were right. Step 3 is exactly the same it wasn't as in our last version. If you remember that, you're going to create solution hypotheses. In other words, you're going to come up with some different designs for solving this problem that you've identified and explain why you think that solving the problem in this particular way will have the expected impact on your metrics. We are not going to go through that entire process again, but combining qual and quant techniques works for things that aren't products too. For example, if you have a sales pipeline, if you're in a sales organization, you could look at that sales pipeline as a funnel. That's what it is, right? I mean, it's shaped the same way and people fall out of it. You might want to interview the people who dropped out at various places in order to understand what was missing from your features, your product's feature set, or your handling of objections, or figure out if you were maybe going after the wrong prospects in the first place. I know. Every time and I've done this like 3 times already, every time I suggest something like interviewing people who said no, people complain that's really hard to do. It is. You're right. Well identified. You should do it anyway. You'll learn a lot, and it's easier than going out of business. Anyway, however you combine these steps, the last step, step 4, is always learn and iterate. Step 5, of course, is profit. When you start to combine them yourself, and you will, hopefully, this is the most important thing to remember. You can always use quantitative data to tell you what is happening. What are your users doing? You can always use qualitative data to tell you why it is happening. So if you're wondering if you should I be talking to users? Should I be testing behavior? Ask yourself, do I want to know what or why? The answer will probably be both, in which case you have to figure out how you're going to combine those 2 types of research to get what you want. And if you do this, I promise you, you will build better products. So that's it. That's what I've got. There's a lot more information like this in both books, UX for Lean Startups and Build Better Products. I would say that I probably cover this in more depth, as well as the entire process in Build Better Products, which is the newer one. But for now, I am happy to try to answer some questions if we had any in chat. And if I don't get to your question, feel free to email it to me. I do eventually answer emails.
Great, thanks, Laura. Yes, we definitely have some great questions here, actually, and we can go ahead and dive right into those. Before we do that, actually, I have, oh, and yes, if you have questions, you can just go ahead and type them into the Q&A box, and we will get to those. Meanwhile, let me pull up the poll that we always run here at the end. This, of course, keeps us, it's kind of funny. It kind of ties into what Laura's talking about. Polls are a sort of a quantitative measure to see for us if the topics that we're covering are appropriate for the audience and how might we go about improving that. So we will.
Do I need to unshare my screen?
No,
No?
It's totally fine. We can leave it there. I will also drop in a link to the book here again.
Thank you.
Products. And I think I mentioned this in chat, but just to reiterate, it's a fantastic book, and we've actually got it in the office on our bookshelf. We work with Rosenfeld Media, so we have a lot of their fantastic books there. But yes, there it is. It's a very practical guide to, as the topic suggests, improving your product design and also your just the kind of the strategy behind your product.
Thanks. Yeah, it was designed specifically for anybody who makes decisions on products to have sort of a tool set that they could use in with their team in order to get to understand what the business strategy is, what the business goal is, to understand user needs better, and then to combine this stuff. It's not exclusively about combining qualitative and quantitative data, but that's sort of that's the backbone of it.
Right.
That's secretly that's what most of it's about.
Right. And actually, let's get straight into the questions. So we have one question here, which I think is probably something that you have definitely been asked before, or the people in the audience here, I think, can definitely empathize with this. I know I do, which is, so when you first build a product, generally, you might have a lot of features in mind, thinking about what you should build first. How do you actually go about determining what feature might be the best to build first? What does that process look like for you?
That is a great question. Oh, prioritization. You are the bane of product development. Yeah, this is the hardest thing we do. And I'm gonna blow your minds. No, I want to reframe that question, because I think that at the heart of the question is perhaps a mistake that we are making, that all of us make from time to time, which is that we approach it from, hey, here's a cool idea for a feature, and we get and I mean, I'm sure that you guys will be familiar with this. I certainly am. Everybody in your company has a suggestion for a feature, and every customer has a suggestion for a feature, and they're all just saying, hey, why don't we do this? Hey, why don't we do this? And I always say that the thing that destroys most products is the phrase, wouldn't it be cool if? So the problem is that you're starting from the feature as opposed to starting from the metrics or starting from the user need, or actually really you're starting from a combination of metrics and user needs. Because a lot of times, and I'm just going to throw this out there, a lot of times what I see is there are 1,000 feature ideas, and they all do something kind of wildly different. Like if you look at them, they're just like, should we add comments, or should we, allow the opportunity to buy in bulk, or should we have a free plan, or should we make it into a platform, or should we allow integrations? And it's like, whoa, those don't have anything to do with each other, right? That's like saying, do I want a hammer or do I want an apple? It's like, yes, at different times. I don't want them for the same thing. So I think the first way to do it is when you find yourself saying like, oh, I have these, 50,000 feature ideas, say, okay, let's stop thinking about features. Think about, what does the business need? What does our company need? Do I need more, like I said, do I need more conversions from free to paid? Do I need more acquisition? Do I need to keep people around for longer? And then ask yourself, what's the user behavior that causes that? Is why do your users convert from free to paid? What's the user need that you're solving there? Why do people come back and buy from you again? Why do people stick with your product for longer? And then say, why don't they do those things, right? Why aren't people converting from free to paid? It's such a great paid service. Why won't they convert? And then once you've done your user research and you understand why people are coming and they're trying out the free service and they're not converting, or whatever it is, then you can go, okay, now I know the user behavior that I'm looking for, and I know what's preventing that user behavior. Now, what is sort of a smaller set of potential features that I could add that I hypothesize would change that user behavior in a positive way? We're not tricking people. I'm never advocating for like, oh, we're just going to tell them we're doing one thing and then we're going to steal their credit card information. No, we are finding a reason that people might want to come back and buy our paid service, and then we're giving it to them, right? We're finding a user need that we can fill that will fulfill our business need. You will find then that you have a much smaller set of potential features. Once you have that much smaller set of potential features where, then when somebody comes in and goes, hey, but why don't we, allow integration with Slack? You can go, that's a great idea, but you know what? That doesn't solve this. That has nothing to do with the thing that we're working on. So you know what? We're going to write that down. And when we care about the metric that will improve, we'll take that into consideration. So anyway, you'll have a much smaller set of features to choose from. At that point, you do have to run some simple validation tests, I think. If they're big enough features, you have to figure out, like, what's the smallest thing that I could possibly do to figure out if this is the right way to solve this particular problem. That's hard, but there are lots of strategies for it in the book. So I wrote that all down so I wouldn't have to tell you.
Right.
But that's the process. Like, start from the business need, go to, understand, what the user need is that you can fulfill, and then try to make some small changes in order to understand if the thing that you're doing actually does change user behavior in the way that you want it to.
Right. Right. And actually, along the way here, there's actually an interesting question that at some point people are going to face this, which is how do you work with stakeholders or clients or product managers who believe they might have it all figured out, right? So how do you kind of start that conversation, basically of telling them, hey, you're wrong because of this or that? What, in your experience, seems to be successful for sort of turning them around?
Yeah. In other words, how do you deal with humans?
Right. Exactly.
How do you convince people that the thing they know is right is not right? Yeah. If I knew the answer to that, I would be writing an entirely different kind of book, and I would, be on Oprah, making millions of dollars. How to convince people that they're wrong? Yeah, that'd be neat. So I do actually have a couple of strategies for this. I don't just have abuse, because it's super hard. I mean, I never want to be one of these people who stands up and is like, oh, just do these 3 simple things, and then it's all easy. Everything I'm talking about is super hard to do. I struggle with it all the time. Do not feel bad for not, like, getting it perfectly all the time. My favorite strategy for dealing with stakeholders and customers who are like, I need to have this, is to treat them all like they're users of the product, and except in this case, the product is the design decisions that you are making, or the product decisions that you are making. Understand why they feel the way they feel, and understand why they want what they want, and then try to address those at the root cause. Because, for example, if you have let's say a startup founder who is like, we have to do this thing, and you're like, that thing is gonna ruin our product. Understand why they think that thing is so important. Because what I've run into is that sometimes they're saying we have to do this thing because what they're saying is, if we don't do this thing, we won't raise our next round of funding, which it turns out, unfortunately, is different from building a good product. Which, I mean, that's just sad but true. Sometimes you have to do things to raise a round of funding that don't actually contribute to the long-term health of the product, and I hate that about this industry, but that's an example of where your needs and your suggestions may not be in alignment with these other folks who are telling you things. If users are coming to you and saying, like, we have to have this feature, this is the most important feature, you need to understand why that is. The answer might be they're the wrong type of user, right? There are people who are only ever going to use your free product. They are never going to use your paid product. They may not be the kind of users that you want to be talking to, right? I mean, it's nothing wrong with free users as long as you have some way to eventually monetize them. But I mean, our goal is not actually to help people at the expense of the company, because we have to not go out of business. Anyway, understand what they're really saying, understand why they're saying it, understand what need they think they're fulfilling. Sometimes they just heard something at a conference and they thought it was a super cool idea and they just want to talk about it, and that's great. I think the best way to work with them is to say, what I said before about the the Slack integration, right? Like that. Wow, that is a cool idea. That's really neat. I like that. What metric does that improve for us? Like what would that do for us as a company? And you have to just keep going back to like, what would that do for us as a company? Oh, okay. Is that a metric that we care about? Like this, oh, it would improve, user engagement. Fantastic. What are some other things we could do to improve user engagement? Right? Turn it around so it's not like, hey, let's build this thing. It's, hey, let's improve this metric, and then let's find the cheapest, easiest, most effective way to long-term improve that metric.
Right.
But so that'll work with some people. I'm going to tell you right now, that will not work with certain people. That will only work with people who think about things from a sort of logical, data-driven perspective. Like it won't. There are people who fall in love with features, and I swear to God, I have never found any way to convince them that their feature was a terrible idea. I think the only thing that you can do with those folks is sometimes get them to use something called the hypothesis tracker. It's in the book again, and I think I did a podcast about it, where you actually get them to write down their predictions about things, and then if you implement them, you make them go back and look at how what they predicted lines up with what actually happened. And one of two things will happen. Either they were right and you were wrong, in which case it's a good thing for you to know so that you can adjust your attitude in the future. Maybe they knew something you didn't. Or they were wrong, and more to the point, maybe they're wrong over and over and over and over. And sometimes you can convince people with data. Sometimes you can kind of go like, look, we've done this 3 times. You've always thought that your idea was going to be the thing that saved the company. And let's look at, like, you wrote it down. Like, you wrote it down and signed it. Like, this is what you predicted would happen, and nothing like that happened. Why do you think that this time is different? Sometimes that'll work, and sometimes that will get you fired. But I mean, frankly, and I say this from a position of great privilege. I'll take getting fired in situations like that over continuing to work for somebody who won't be swayed by data every single time.
Right. And actually, speaking of data here, now we've got a more sort of intricate question, which is, for your work, do you ever use multivariate testing instead of A/B testing? And if so, what are some criteria that you have used to determine, okay, is this an A/B test, or do we run a multivariate test?
That's a great question, and it exposes a lot more knowledge of A/B versus multivariant than I usually get. So thank you. I appreciate that. I normally don't get questions that in depth. Yes, I have. Couple of criteria that I use. One is very straightforward math. Do I have enough people to do it? And I mean, hell, I often don't have enough users, especially in early products, to even do A/B testing. So multivariant is a whole other ball of wax, and I always have to look up what the right, what the variance is and that kind of thing. One thing to remember with multivariate is that sometimes there are a couple of different ways to do it. You can make one sort of small change on each variant of your test and test it. The problem is that sometimes what people then do is that they will sort of combine afterwards the winning, oh, this link color, and I'm not a big fan of the little tiny tests like that. It's fine, whatever, if you have enough people, but this link color did the best, and then this button color did the best in this other test, so we're going to combine those, and that doesn't always work, right? Like if you've got the red link color and the red button color did the best, and oddly, when we combine them, nobody could read the goddamn button. So you always have to be a little bit careful about sort of combining things from different tests. One thing to remember though is that when you're doing multivariant, let's take a landing page as an example, because it's a simple example. It's not the only kind of thing you can do. But let's say that you have 5 different landing pages, and you're like, okay, well, there are 5 entirely different approaches with entirely different messaging and entirely different calls to action and entirely different, anything. That's great. We're going to build all 5 of them and test all 5 of them. Wonderful. Let's do that. Oh, look, variant 3 crushed all the other ones. You still kind of have to figure out why that happened, right? You still have to figure out, okay, well, was it the messaging? Was it just clear? Was it, which is fine. I think that multivariant, let me put it this way. I feel like multivariant is often a good place to sort of start. Like you sort of start big, like let's try these 5 totally separate approaches. Okay, now let's sort of break it down using maybe some qualitative and maybe a little more quantitative to understand why this one did better. When you're, that's honestly, I'm being a little weird about this. That's honestly a problem anytime you're testing 2 wildly different things from each other, even if it's just 2, much less 5. Anyway, the answer is math. The answer, you don't do it if you don't have enough people. Most of us don't really have enough people. Most of us don't have enough, discipline to test across 5 different, variants of the same thing. And frankly, a lot of engineers aren't super excited about building 5 different versions of the same thing and throwing away 4 of them. So that's also a thing to consider. If you're building it yourself, great, go for it.
Gotcha. And someone here is also curious, in your experience, what are some useful tools you have found for analytics as well as for split testing?
So the problem with this, of course, is that I only ever know about the thing that I'm using currently because things change so fast. I've used Mixpanel, I've used Google Analytics. I currently use Mixpanel and Google Analytics. I use Launch Darkly, which is fantastic for doing sort of like small rollouts to groups of users and seeing how things are going. And I think you can do some split testing stuff with it. I mostly use it for feature flags, but it's great. I use for the, I mean, that's my current feature set, and it works. There are lots of others. I cannot tell you that I went through and did an exhaustive search of what the current features, we made this decision 5-6 months ago based on a bunch of different things. There could have been 5 new packages that came out between then and now. This is how fast these things move.
Right. And
but Google Analytics is incredibly powerful and free, so I would always, you always start with that.
Right. And I know here at UXPin we use a mix of Google Analytics and Kissmetrics, which is of course a competitor to Mixpanel.
Also use Kissmetrics, an excellent product.
Right, and then also Optimizely for any of our A/B testing as well.
Also a good option and nice because it allows sort of non-technical people to make some of the changes.
Right.
Sometimes, again, this is one of those things where I all of my information about Optimizely is based on when I used them, like when they started, several years ago. So I always think of them as being more about like if you want to test, text or button color, but it's very possible now that they've expanded. I assume that they've expanded that wildly, and you can now test like different flows and that kind of thing. But
right, they're pretty robust now, actually.
Yeah.
Optimizely.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I would recommend folks, if you're not using them already, to definitely check them out. They now also have a full stack platform that allows you to work with engineers on your team to push changes live very quickly and have everything tracking and just so that your team can work a lot more autonomously on your experiments. It's fantastic. But actually the next question we have here is from Jesse, who is curious about, again, sample size for research studies. So you mentioned that 4 to 6 was sort of the right size for the qual study and hypothetical example you were talking about. Can you give a little more insight into how you go about choosing the sample size for a study? Is it purely based on statistical significance, or is there other factors at work?
So for qualitative, it's never statistical significance. You are never going for statistical. I need to pick something with an easier word to pronounce.
Yeah.
I am never going for significance with qualitative. That is not what qualitative is about. Qualitative is about generating hypotheses generally and ideas, and I can generally do that based on patterns that I see in a smaller group. For if you're actually measuring statistical significance, like in an A/B test or in metrics or analytics, it's absolutely 100% just numbers. It's just a numbers game. I'm not going to tell you what those numbers are because I'm typically not great at doing that kind of math on the fly. So I, look it up or get help, or because you have to understand things like I said, like variance, and is it a yes or no question, or is it a slight? Anyway, doesn't matter, not important. But for qualitative, I said 4 to 6, and here's the thing. If you are doing qualitative research, if you are doing something like an observational usability study, or if you are talking to people and getting opinions, or you are, calling people who have left your company in disgust, you should see patterns in what they are saying or doing within 4 to 6 conversations, observations, sessions, right? You should start to see fairly strong patterns of, wow, everybody, or 5 out of 6 people got stuck in this place, or whatever. If you're not seeing patterns after about 5 people, you have not narrowed your sample, your participant type enough. You haven't screened well enough. What you're probably doing is you're probably saying like, oh, I'm just talking to anybody who's ever used my product. Well, I mean, if you're a big enough product, that could be a lot of different kinds of people. I mean, if you think about, the kind of people who use Facebook, if you happen to talk to like, somebody who runs ads on Facebook as opposed to like somebody who uses it to share cat memes versus, somebody who's like organizing, a march, like they're going to have very different needs and reasons for using it and reasons for leaving it, and why it worked for them, why it didn't. You probably don't want to talk to one of each of those, right? Even though they are all technically Facebook users, you need to narrow it down based on the hypothesis that you're sort of working on, which is like, which kind of if you know, and you should know, if you know, oh, I have 5 different main types of users, 5 different personas, or whatever you want to call them, user types, you really want to stick to the user type that you think that the thing that you're working on is going to affect, if that makes sense. So if you're not seeing patterns after about 5, you need to either narrow your scope of study, or you need to narrow your participant type. And I always like to say like, oh yeah, I never do more than 5 sessions at a time. So I do 5, sessions, start to see patterns, make some changes, do some things, and then do another 5, right? I wrote an article called Predictive Personas. I think if you search my site, it's probably on there or linked from there. My site's usersknow.com. And you can find predictive personas, and that has sort of an example of what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. And the next question we've got here is actually about, I have this here. So this is always a sort of interesting question. I know this is something we face on almost, weekly basis, definitely on a monthly basis, which is, how do you identify when something is worth an overhaul versus a small incremental change? Is there a clear distinction between picking one or the other, or what does that sort of decision process look like for you?
Yeah, how much pain is it causing users? How much pain is it causing developers? How much pain is it causing, basically the answer is, can I get away with not doing a major overhaul? Because major overhauls are, I feel like major overhauls are to be avoided at all costs. So you only do them if you just really, there's no other way forward, and it is causing you so much pain, and it's causing you to not be able to, improve things for users. Like you're just at a state where you can't do it. Or, there's the thing people always complain about with A/B testing is that it just helps you optimize. And I think that a lot of people fall into this trap just in general with feature development, where you're just kind of like, if the rewards that you're let me put it this way. Let's say that your conversion rate needs to be at 30% in order for you to survive as a company. Otherwise, you're going to go out of business. And every single little change that you're making to conversion rate, or you're making to your product, which is affecting user behavior, which is contributing to conversion rate, every single thing you're doing is, improving it by like 0.5% or, 1%, right? But you need to get, like you're at 10% and you need to get to 30%. Like, you're not getting there by little incremental changes. And you are able to see that when you're looking at your metrics. You're like, well, at this rate, we will have gotten to our required conversion rate about 4 years after we've gone out of business. So that's a problem. When you're there, you're just looking at your number. Then it's just numbers, right? Are these kinds of little changes going to get me where I need to go? If the answer is no, then you either need to see if you can affect one of your other metrics significantly enough, or maybe you need to look look at your entire thing. Maybe you have the wrong users. Maybe you have the wrong product. Maybe you are not solving a problem for people. Maybe you need a full redesign. It's generally not that, but I mean, it might be, right? I worked on a product where it was an old legacy product, and it had been written and it was built with baling wire and duct tape and optimism. And, we got to the point where we couldn't make significant changes to the code base anymore because it was just so much of a mess. Every time we made any change, everything would break. And these were good engineers. These were not crappy engineers like hacking away at things. They were just, they were building on a product that was built on sand. And they really did have to go back and rewrite the entire code base. And it was worth it because suddenly we could actually make changes and iterate and make improvements. But so, you'll find yourself occasionally in places like that. My suggestion is try not to end up in places like that because they're really hard to dig your way out of. And that's when companies go out of business.
Right. And actually the next question is kind of a bit further along in the process, which is, in your experience, is there a sort of comfortable cadence for running user testing on a live product? Is it something, for instance, that should be done weekly, monthly? Just curious to get a sense from you. What is like a realistic cadence in an organization for doing regular testing of a product?
This is one of the very few areas where I enjoy arguing with Steve Krug, who is a genius, and he's really good about usability, and he's sort of the one who knows the most about it. And he's actually, I think, the one who sort of came up with the idea of the whatever, like 2 on Tuesday or 5 on Friday, whatever,
right?
The X on X. Here's what I'm going to say. It depends on what your goal is, because this is going to sound a little weird. Your goal for usability testing is not always directly finding usability problems to fix. Sometimes it's you want to make the entire team aware of what they're doing to users, in which case do it weekly at least, right? Do it as often as you can get other people to sit in and watch what you're doing. Sometimes it's actually to find usability problems in a very specific thing, or it's to, for example, test a prototype, in which case do it as needed. I personally don't like having the, do it every day or every week or every month set in stone, unless the goal is sort of making sure that the team doesn't get out of the habit of it. That is a good benefit to doing it every week. You make sure that the team doesn't sort of go like, whatever, we haven't talked to users in 6 months, but fine. But I prefer more sort of targeted research done on a regular basis. You should be talking to somebody in your company, and hopefully, designers or product managers or, salespeople, like, you should be talking to users and communicating with users and getting feedback from users in various different ways all the time. You should always be getting some input, every week at least, you should be getting some input from users. But I feel like there's sort of this natural ebb and flow of design process, even with Agile. I mean, I know we're not doing waterfall anymore where it's like, oh, the user research process is this first 3 months. We're not doing that, but there is still sort of a natural ebb and flow. Sometimes you're in a process where it's like, oh, now we have to like do a big data migration and that's going to take 2 weeks. And, that doesn't really have any effect on usability. Maybe that's a good time for your designers to be out doing usability testing. Anyway, do it as needed unless the goals are to make sure that you don't stop doing it, in which case do it as often as you need to do to keep everybody in the habit.
Right.
And don't be precious about it's always got to be usability test. This is the other thing that I see. There's one danger to it that I do want to bring up. I have seen people do this usability testing every week. And what ends up happening is you become not very disciplined about it. So you're always testing the same thing over and over, or you're only testing with new users. So you're always getting the same feedback, and you can get a couple of problems. You can get people who become sort of numb to certain problems, which is that's actually an issue. It's like, oh yeah, that problem, that's been there forever and people keep using the product. Yeah, except for the ones who don't. Like you can actually become sort of numb if you see the problems over and over and over, and you're like, oh, people are living with that. It's like, well, but are they? Or are we losing 50% of our users because of this one problem that you don't think is a big deal because you've seen it so often? But it doesn't make it not bad. It just means that you've left it for way too long. So that's actually an issue. And also, like, if you're not disciplined about, like, no, we want to test this thing and understand this thing. If you're just like, yeah, just bring people in, whatever, you get a lot of random noise. So even if you're doing it once a week, make sure you're being disciplined about, like, what are we trying to learn? Who are we testing? Are we making sure that we're bringing in the right kinds of people?
Right. No, that's such a valid point, especially because I've been running some usability tests this week, and that's something that always happens is you have the sort of goal in mind of what you're trying to actually get feedback on, but it's really like drinking from a fire hose because people react to whatever they see, and it's not. It's so easy to go off on a tangent and kind of lose sight of what the original sort of research goal was.
Yeah. Yeah, I got 1,000 complaints. Like, oh, okay, that's probably not. We're not going to fix all of those this week, and you don't need to go out next week and find the exact same, 1,000 or 999. Like, you need to identify the worst ones and fix those, and then see if it helps.
Yep. And since we are coming up at the end of the hour, we're going to take the last question here, which is, I think, pretty relevant for anybody who has done user testing in a company, which is remote user testing, of course, is, or I think this person is saying remote unmoderated testing is exponentially faster than going out and sort of recruiting and scheduling for a moderated session. In your experience, when have you found unmoderated testing useful versus moderated user testing?
So I'm going to distinguish a little bit between user research and usability testing, which are in my mind 2 very different things. User research, I never, ever, ever do unmoderated. Often do it remote. But user research, where you're trying to actually understand about the user and their motivations and what they do, never unmoderated, because like the whole point is like to understand the human and to get at what their process is, and like you're going to observe things and you're going to ask follow-up questions. And user research, if I'm trying to understand the human who is using the product, never unmoderated. Sometimes remote, sometimes not remote if their context matters a tremendous amount, like if it's a kind of thing where I have to follow them around all day, or if it's like in a place or any of that. If it's just sort of like, yeah, it's on the computer, like you can, look at their computer screen and it's great. Remote is great. Usability testing can often be unmoderated, especially if you don't have a good moderator. That is a lot of companies, right, don't have a trained usability or user researcher, and that can be okay. And I include design. I am a designer who is also a trained user researcher and usability tester. So I, like I count. But so designers who do this, or product managers who are really good at it, they count. But like sometimes you just don't have that. Like you just don't have anybody who knows how to ask good questions, and you don't have anybody who knows how to not lead. And you should acquire those skills yourself because they're important. But if you don't have them yet, unmoderated can actually be a great way to not bias your test, which is something to consider. The other thing too is that like sometimes what'll happen is, you go through the process that I talked about where, you make a change and you think this change is going to be better for people based on the research you've already done. And so you've made this change and now you just want to kind of see like, did I screw anything up? Like, did I make that checkout flow worse in any way? Like, did this actually fix the thing I think it fixed? And so confirmation studies like that, or, validation or invalidation studies like that, I think can often be done unmoderated if it's just like a very simple, straightforward sort of task. Like, okay, I just like to observe 5 people going through the flow without, my biasing them in any way. It's great for remote unmoderated.
Right. I know, just adding from our experience here, as we run user tests, generally what we found to work well is if the design is in more of a rougher state, so it's like a lower fidelity prototype, we always do moderated testing because undoubtedly somebody will probably hit a hiccup, or they may have a really interesting moment where you want them to expand further. And then as you have more fidelity and the design starts to look more finished, you can get away with doing more unmoderated tests because at that point, like you said, you're starting to just see how they react to like certain flows or certain specific tasks where there might be less friction in the testing.
No, that is 100% true. I'm going to do a yes. You are 100% right. If you are testing prototypes, and I can't tell you how often I've had to be like, okay, look, this prototype is very much a prototype. It's not finished. Lots of stuff on it doesn't work. And people will still, even in moderated tests, people will still get hung up on that. And you just need the moderator there to sort of go like, yeah, oh, I know. Sorry about that. It's just prototype. Just move on. Also happens sometimes you'll be doing usability testing and you'll know that something sucks. This happens like, oh yeah, we know about that problem and we are currently fixing that problem, but I'd really like you to concentrate on this other thing so I can also understand that. Sometimes you just need a human being to like get the person unstuck, because they will tell you all about how this thing sucks, and you're like, yeah, I don't want to be rude, but like I know that's terrible, and we're fixing it.
Right. And yeah, those are all great points. And yeah, thanks Laura for joining us here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. And again, I closed out by writing the links to the 2 books here on the chat here. We have both of these in the office, and they're really good. So if anybody is curious to just learn more about how to be methodical in your product development and making it better, these are great. I know our product team has referenced these at certain points. So yeah, Laura, thanks again for joining us. Everybody, thank you for joining us. I think we had like 600 people joining us here today from around the world. So great session, and thank you for all of your questions here. And next week, I will see you guys on a session with Jana Bastow here, who's going to be talking about product roadmaps. And that'll be at the same time, so 10 a.m. Pacific. Yep, see you guys next Wednesday. Thanks for joining the webinar. And yeah, have a great day, Laura.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
All right, take care, everybody.